Big Questions with the Dead Milkmen.
Jay was talking with me the other day about those compilation albums. Now This Is Music. Do you know those?
Yes.
They're very, very popular. And I was like,
They should
"Are
have a
still making
question
these?"
mark at the end. Now this is
Now This Is Music
Now This Is
volume. And we found out they were up to volume 116 that came out in November. I couldn't believe
it.
And they're wildly popular still. They sell in the hundreds of thousands. And number 117 is coming out in April, on April 5th. So mark your calendars. And it gave me the idea. It made me think about various artist albums in general. I was surprised they're still making them, but I thought for this big questions, I would ask, what are one or two, or maybe even three, various artist albums that you found to be inspiring to the development of your musical taste or anything else? Just inspiring. What makes them worthy of mention? And these are real albums we're going to talk about this week, in case you don't know.
Oh, great. Well, there goes this script.
At least I'm going to talk about real ones. Back in the 70s or even 60s and 80s, apparently, Warner Brothers would sell via mail order only these double albums. They called them lost leaders. If you bought a Warner Brothers album back then, you might see an insert or the inner sleeve would have a mailing coupon, and for $2 each, you could choose, a number of these compilation albums. They would have some. It would be kind of like a marketing thing where then you would maybe buy more, be introduced to the artist, maybe some lesser known ones in a genre that you like. So they're kind of genrefied. In 1980, they came out with this sort of punk, new wave, post-punk compilation called Troublemakers, which I had to send away for. I like mail anyway, so it was only $2 plus some shipping costs, so it wasn't that much. And what caught me was that Sex Pistols were on it, Devo was on it, Gang of Four. I didn't have any albums by those bands at that point anyway. And it's actually was better than I expected it to be. In fact, I loved it. It had the Sex Pistols songs are on it. There's a couple that they're live, so they were previously unreleased. That's another thing that they would say. Some songs on these records were never released before and will never be released again. It introduced me to the band Wire. I never heard them before, and it had two songs by them: the awesome "I Should Have Known Better" and map reference 41 North 93 West, which are from, I think, their second album. But because of that, I went out and got Pink Flag, and I fell in love with Wire, and it introduced me to the Modern Lovers. I never heard of them before. Jonathan Richman. Because of that, I sought out Modern Lovers albums, and I found a Jonathan Richman album. He was influential to me, for better or worse. And Nico, I found out about the Velvet Underground through Nico, through this, and later heard the Velvet Underground like them when I got to college. The Buggles, Video Killed the Radio Star, great song. And Gang of Four, I bought their and Public Image Limited, I bought their albums too. So the crass marketing worked perfectly for me for this, and it influenced me quite a bit in my musical taste. So that was one. And then when I got off to college, I had a friend, Kurt Brenneman, who had an awesome music collection. And I think in 1981, he showed me this album called Let Them Eat Jellybeans. And it just changed my world even more because it had Bad Brains doing Pay to Come. I never heard anything like that. In fact, I had to go to the record store soon after that and find it. It was import only at first. And
we'll get to that.
Flipper was on it. I'd never heard of them, so it made me buy a Flipper album, and they were great. They're a band from you probably know Flipper. They're super awesome. DOA, Black Flag was on it. I already knew the Dead Kennedys because I had their first 2 releases by then, but Circle Jerks were on it. The Feeders, Cheese Centering from the Rear, another song I loved. Very blasphemous, I guess. And then that was side 1 was very punk, and then side 2 was very I guess experimental, half Japanese. Are there a Christian lunch? Do jokes on you. There's this song called Everyone's a Bigot, which is annoying but good. By the band called The Offs, never heard of them again. But yeah, so those are my 2 albums. I also would like to take a time to mention the weirdest various artists albums I have, and the most recent one I bought all the way back in, if you don't count the Dr. Demento thing, I won't count that one because that's the most recent. But this is from 2015. I was surprised to see that it was even for sale, and the Dead Milkmen are on it. It's The Orange is the New Black.
New Black, yeah.
Songs from the original series, seasons 2 and 3. We are sandwiched with Bitch and Camaro in between 50 Cent with Death to My Enemies and Deep Blue Something, Breakfast at Tiffany's. It's a very eclectic collection, very
Who
strange.
here went into work the next day after that episode and had a whole bunch of people lined up to talk to you? I did. Joe, that
I didn't know
copy-
that I didn't know it was going to be an album. I didn't even know it was going to be on the. Yeah, that was both the series and the album were surprises to me.
Joe, was that your original copy of Troublemakers?
Yeah, I never got rid of it.
Can you see through it? Because you and I used to play the hell out of that thing when we were teenagers.
Well,
that was
it's probably on
on.
cheaper vinyl. You probably can see through it if you hold it up to the light. I'll get back to you.
And Kurt Brenneman, the guy that Joe mentioned, who turned him on to Let Them Eat Jellybeans. I just mentioned him recently, and I was on a podcast, and I was saying how Kurt Brenneman had the idea for the band called Super Friends. There was like a really angry hardcore band. It was kind of like like Anti-Nowhere League. But then they were called Super Friends, so people would keep hiring them for like children's birthday parties. Man was a
great fun to talk with.
Genius. He invented a dance called the contact lens, where he would drop down on the floor.
I guess it's my turn.
Yeah.
All right, the 3 various artist comps I wanted to talk about. Well, I'm going to combine 2 of them into one because there's the Nuggets Volume 1 and Volume 2, and I can't decide which one is better, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, Joe, you bought me Nuggets Volume 1. I think I bought you Nuggets Volume 2.
Yeah.
And we each made like a greatest hits disc for each other of the other one.
Called Chicken McNuggets.
I think it's a truncated Nuggets.
Truncated Nuggets. Ow.
But yeah, that was about maybe 2001 or 2. And that compilation just blew me away. I don't know. It still does. It's filled with all these relatively mostly unknown bands. And it's interesting to think some of these really cool songs, it's just these bands did 1, maybe 2 songs, and then they ceased to exist. So it's a cool comp. I'm not going to go through all the track listings. The other one is called Hava Narghile, and it's this Turkish like 60s and 70s psychedelic music. And it's something maybe in like 2007 or 8, my cousin Woods made a comp of this comp, like, and some other stuff. And it's incredible. I don't understand a word of it, but the music is like nothing else. It's ahead of its time. I'll send a link. I couldn't find, I tried to find like the full album on YouTube, but I didn't. So there were some tracks from it. But the other one, I got this. I was drunk by myself one night. This was probably like 2000 or 2001. And I was watching infomercials, and do you guys remember there was like a Time Life folk years compilation. And I watched this thing, you know how it like cycles, and I'm pretty sure it was what's his name? John Sebastian from Love and Spoonful.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever happened, and this is why I don't drink by myself. Why I don't really drink at all. But I couldn't justify not buying it. And it's like 1995, and it's one of those things where it was like 6 installments. It was 1995. But the funny part is I like didn't remember that I did it, and I got the bill, or I got it in the mail and was like, whoa. And then I was like, I don't know if I really even care much about this folk music. But it was maybe like 6 or 7 years later. I was like going through weird like life changes. I was like living in a room in a squat house, like right when Edgar was born. And for some reason, I found solace listening to this like 5 or 6 disc folk years box set. It's got everything. And you know what? It's a nice, like, it's like an encyclopedia for a time that I wasn't alive, you know, and I can just get like a little bit of this and that. There's Joan Baez, and like you don't have to like go and listen to all of her albums. You can get an idea of what everybody sounds like, you know. Cool. It's actually a pretty good. There's a great Johnny Cash doing "It Ain't Me, Babe." It's really cool.
Did you ever see the episode of Home Movies where McGurk buys the swords off the Home Shopping Network? And he says to Brandon, he goes, you wouldn't understand, Brandon. And Brandon goes, what? You get drunk and you buy things off of TV? He goes, I guess you would understand. That just reminded me of that.
That's about right, yeah.
All right. I love that show.
I also ordered an electric wheelchair one time, but we'll get into that another time. My mom told me the next day, she was like, I got a call from... But anyway, that's another...
I got a buddy that does this with synths. He'll go out to a club and get drunk and then tell me next day, yeah, I came home and just like, no, don't do that.
Well, I guess my thinking was like, and this is terrible, I can't believe I'm admitting this, but what I was drunkenly thinking was, if I'm in a wheelchair, electric wheelchair, nobody's ever going to ask me or question that I'm in it, like in public. Nobody's going to be like, what are you doing in that? They just assume that I'm supposed to be in it, so I can just get around and I don't have to walk anymore.
This was pre-Gypsy Rose Blanchard, right?
I'm not sure. I can't really pinpoint the exact.
Well, Gypsy Rose thing was pretty recent, so yeah, I'm just saying. Well, it just got out. I don't know. It was like 10 years ago. Yeah.
This was at least 20 years ago.
Okay, now people will question you because of her.
So that's it.
Okay. I have 3 too. Geez, we're loading up the playlist tonight here. The first one I'm going to talk about is in our CD collection. It's the Best of Bubblegum Music. It's got 20 tracks on it. It was put out by Buddah Records, who put out a lot of stuff like this. For those who don't know what bubblegum music is, it's like pop music. It's like upbeat, catchy stuff for kids and young people. It was like, I guess, started in the 1960s, maybe. Archie's Sugar Sugar is a good example of a bubblegum song. Anyway, this collection includes a bunch of bubblegum tracks. 3 I'll call out. There's a song called Goody Goody Gumdrops by the 1910 Fruitgum Company. Of course, the classic Yummy 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 by the Ohio Express. It also has, and this is more psychedelic to me than like bubblegum. It has the Green Tambourine by the Lemon Pipers. So I don't know. It's a really cool song. It's got some weird tracks on it. So that's one. The second one is also like Dan, it's kind of 2 CDs in one. I have volume 1 and volume 2. These are the Incredibly Strange Music's releases from Research, R-E-Search. Research was started by Vale. He was actually one of the original members of Blue Cheer, the band from the 1960s in San Francisco. And he started publishing stuff in like Search and Destroy, I think was the first thing he put out. And they're still around. He's still publishing stuff. Anyway, these 2 CDs sort of showcase exotica, outsider, and weirdo tracks. 3 that I'll call out are the Minute Merengue from Harry Bruer from his LP Mallet Mischief. There's a track called Mr. Hot Rod by the Scramblers. No, I don't think it's about John Holmes. And there's Tico Tico by Joanne Castle, which is an accordion track. And you can check out those. I'll provide links to those. And then the third one is kind of a weird collection of CDs. In 1988, Martin Scorsese released a film called The Last Temptation of Christ. And the score was composed by Peter Gabriel. And he released an album called Passion of the music that he wrote for the film. But then he also came out with an album after that, which was like Passion Sources. And he had these recordings, field recordings and things of other artists that inspired him to make the music for the movie. There are 3 tracks that I'll call out from this album. And if you're interested in this kind of sort of world music type stuff, I don't even know if they call it world music anymore. He has a label called the Real World Records, which is still publishing plenty of stuff every year. I have like a compilation CD of various tracks from the early 90s that they put out from various artists. There very well may be some of that Turkish stuff on here, Dan, I don't know. Anyway, those are my 3 sort of oddball compilation records.
Good choices. I got to keep an eye on the time for mine for 2 reasons. One, I got a lot of stuff I want to recommend. And also because I just found out this Yeti beer is like 9.5% alcohol by volume. So, all right. So I'm going to start off with, I gave some rules to myself. No soundtrack albums for this. So there won't be any Return of the Living Dead or The Crow. And if you have an opinion about the new Crow movie, feel free to keep it yourself. You don't need to share it with anybody. That's what everybody is saying, and I'm with them on that. The album I'm going to recommend, the first one, because I'm going to do something inspired me a long time ago, something inspired me recently, and then the last one I sort of bought, although I think I bought 2 on the same day. Recently, a couple days ago, various artist albums. The one I'm going to recommend, the first of, the one that really inspired me because I was a teenager when I heard it, an album from 1981 called Hell Comes to Your House. And to get this album, I had to go to a record store. Joe talked about the import thing earlier. There was a record store in Westchester, Pennsylvania, owned by 2 old hippies who hated punk rock. And when you went in to buy a punk rock album, no matter what it was, it could be Black Flag, the Dead Kennedys, it was an import. And you would say, well, this band is from California. And they'd say, you don't know anything about punk rock. All punk rock comes from England. Everybody knows that. So they would just slap him. And also they're famous because the last line in the Quincy Punk episode, Quincy says, why would anybody listen to music that makes you want to hate when you could listen to music that makes you want to love? They actually said that to me. I was so weirded out. And they said it before the Quincy thing. And then they would try to sell you these Grateful Dead bootlegs. It was a rough place to shop, but I went in there and this cover just leapt out at me. It was a very red cover and it had like a circus performer on the front with 2 like flaming fire eater things. And I'm like, I'm interested. And then the back cover was just as amazing. The songs were in the wrong spot. Side 1 was over on the right and side 2 was over on the left, the opposite of where you would expect the track listings to be. There's a picture of like a punk rock, some people, punk rock people with some acoustic guitars, like turning up on some family's doorstep. And the kids seem interested. The parents seem frightened. There's all these pictures of the bands done up like zombies, like coming at you. I was like, oh, this is going to be good. This, and it is good. First of all, it starts off with 2 songs from Social Distortion. Now, some of you younger viewers watching this are probably going to say, Social Distortion, isn't that a Fonzie band? They weren't always a Fonzie band. They weren't always a rockabilly band. They were super spooky at one point. One song called Lewd Boy that they used to dedicate to Minor Threat. And the other song is Telling Them. And this version of Telling Them is actually better than the Telling Them that's on Mommy's Little Monster, which is one of my favorite albums of all time. I heard these first 2 tracks and became this huge Social Distortion fan. I used to have the 45 of 1945. I loved them so much. And even though they went rockabilly, they still have a little place in my heart. Then we've got Christian Death on there doing Dogs. Now, some of you are going, you said this album came out in 1981 and Only Theater of Pain didn't come out till 1982. You're a big liar. No, if you had this album, you were into Christian Death a year before everybody else. So next time you look at me and you say, well, what's this guy know about music I don't? I was into Christian Death a year before everybody else. So don't forget to open up a big can of Shut the Fuck Up. It's also got on it 3 tracks by 45 Grave. I love 45 Grave. They appear in some of my favorite stuff. The song 45 Grave here doesn't have the organ on it, which is really super weird. There's a song called Marriott by Rhino 39. It is amazing. We'll put up the link. YouTube, the album's up on YouTube. Marriott is freaking fantastic. I always thought Rhino 39 had appeared on New Wave Theater. They didn't. But I have software that I use when I mix and master, because if you want to get good at mixing, mastering, it's good to use some software and kind of learn how to do that. And I had this for years, and I used Rhino 39's song Marriott as a reference track, and it broke the software. I just very recently got new, so I should probably let them know that they did that. And if you the only misstep on the album, they included a Red Cross cover of Puss in Boots. Doesn't quite fit, but if you got the UK version of it, actual import, they had Outer Circle doing Venetian blind Venetians. So and we'll have up a link to that so you can hear kind of what it would have sounded like with that stuck in there. So if you know like an 18-year-old, because I was 18 when this came out, if you know an 18-year-old who's into like snail mail or Japanese breakfast, play them this album, watch them piss themselves, and then curl up in a corner going, "Oh, spooky music scared me." Okay, so then let's go. We're going to jump ahead 40 years. Some people are going to say, wait, you stuck with music for 40 years? Yes, I did. I kept thinking that these bands would be the next big thing. And I got disappointed as time went on, because you get grunge, you get the wimpy stuff now. But I'm going to go back to 40 years from that last album to 2001. Negative Game Productions, who some of you might know for their Obey the Noise compilation that came out. I think that was 2018. But they put out 2, so let's stick them together because everybody else got to do it. They put together 2 compilation albums. The first one was called NGP, that's Negative Game Production magazine, issue 1, Women of Dark Electro. Which is kind of a play on the old Playboy, where they have like, women of the Ivy League. This has Goo Monday, Corlix, and Wirespine. So if your idea of women's music is Sleater Kinney, you're in a really amazing surprise for this. So this is, it's just really, really good. And I hope we have the cover up for that at one point, because then the next one was issue 2, and that was called Our Digital World. And that had people on it like Morris Black, who I think is a genius, and Order of the Static Temple. So again, if you know somebody who's into Boy Genius, play them some Order of the Static Temple and watch them hide. But here's the thing. We're going to put up the table of context for the PDFs. These came with PDFs. You know how people always go, I like vinyl because of the art. Well, this is PDFs. You can get digital. And they came with magazines. We'll put up the table of contents. If you look at the table of contents, it's spooky people coming at you. It's very much like Hell Comes to Your House. Probably why I was so comfortable with it. I'm like, my God, there are still weirdos out there. It made, it's one of those things that makes me so happy. Every now and then I'll go back and think, yeah, people are still making weirdo, what I call outsider music. But, we all know what the rest of the world calls outsider music. And then the last thing that I actually bought 2 pretty much on the same day. I bought a Various Artists album because the Ire from Philadelphia are on it, and also because it benefited a good cause. I bought that, but the one I want to talk about is Next Wave Acid Punk's Duh and Secret Cuts. This is actually a person called Curses, which is a Berlin-based musician and DJ, not Berlin, Pennsylvania. I've already got in trouble for that. No, but called Curses. And this has Ghost Cop on it. It's got Parasites. It's got Novo Testamento. It's got like U-Man. It's really, really good. But they have put out 2 earlier comps called Next Wave Acid Punks that dealt with the early acts. It dealt with stuff like Throbbing Gristle and DFX, all this really, stuff that people kind of might know. And then this was very smart, because this is like, see how this stuff used to be? Well, these are the new bands. So if you go out and you get any of this, and we'll put up on the links, right there's hundreds of bands. I would say do yourself a favor and jump down and go for the newer stuff first, because I always bump into people who go, I'm turning my kids on to punk rock. I'm like, don't do that. Start with the newer stuff, and then they can go back and find the older stuff. But yeah, this is really, really good, and really it makes me happy for the future of Various Artist albums.
Thank you.
You should have made everybody name the last, but Joe named the last one he bought. Okay.
Well, I thought I could name the last one I bought, but now I think I did buy a Various Artists album in in the year 2020, and I think we recommended it on the show. It was a bunch of Philly bands getting together to support some calls back in the pandemic. Yeah. Anyway, speaking of recommendations, it's time for recommendations.
We've got 8 minutes.
And we have 8 minutes. I'm going to very briefly recommend a YouTube channel that probably needs no recommendation because it already has millions and millions of subscribers, but it might not be you. It's the Professor of Rock, and he has these little thumbnails that are almost, they're a clickbait, at least to me, things like everyone knows this song, but no one knows who the singer was. Or Rock Band had 21 hits and they were all cover songs. Legend wrote song as a joke after getting dissed at a party. It became 80s smash hit. And then you click it and then he tells the story of the song. You soon find out what the song is. And then he'll tell you some things you probably didn't know about. And sometimes he even has interviews with the songwriters or somebody or the artists involved. And it's
click it and you're disappointed, much like last week's video.
Yes.
Get to the point, bro.
Get to the point, bro.
And now, Dan.
I'll make mine quick. I just want to recommend, take it easy. You know, whatever are you stressed about something? Just take it easy. Just, it'll pass. Speaking of pass, Dean, you're done.
Okay. I would like to recommend a YouTube video called Hey Dave, Your ARP Odyssey is Done. It's by the Foley Electronics Repair Shop, who are based in Cincinnati, Ohio. They make a demo video of all the cool old synths and musical equipment that they repair. And this is a great video, you know, so you can check out their channel, but this one in particular is really good. Also, they wear wigs. Mm-hmm. And if you want to check out their latest video as of this recording of this March 13th, 2024, the latest one is called, Hey Jared, we got the beans off your Juno 106, but the fire sauce is really stuck on there. Highly recommended.
I watched a video of a guy repairing an ARP Odyssey for about 30 minutes before he realized there was nothing wrong with it. The patch cable he had was bad. And I'm glad he put the video up there. All right, first thing I'm going to recommend, if you make a really cool graphic of Susie Sue doing Let's Get Physical and it doesn't get used in the video, try and get it used again. Might be looking at that right now. I don't know. Okay. Also, album. Let's talk about Anya Yu. Who right now some of you are going from Exmal Deutschland. Yes, Anya Yu from Exmal Deutschland, who would be a contemporary of three of us, who would be about our age, has a new album out called Codes, and it kicks ass. Sometimes you see like artists that they get past their 40s or whatever, and they kind of lose the fire in their belly. She is still on fire. This album is amazing. I think it's going to make my top 10 of the year. And again, we're only in early March. But man, I've been waiting to hear the whole thing. I was not disappointed. Codes by Anya Yu is really, really good. And Anya Yu is from the 80s. So since we say from the 80s, but she's an Exmal Deutschland. And I mentioned the 80s earlier. So let's talk about the 80s. I'm going to recommend 2 films from the 80s, and both have Virginia Madsen in it. Woohoo! You might know her from Candyman, and she was also in the original Dune, but only for like 3 minutes. The first is called Modern Girls, and this film is really, really funny. It involves somebody having my favorite acid trip of all time and saying the weirdest thing, my favorite film acid trip. There's also a great line shouted, "Take him under!" It's goofy, but it is, if you were in LA in the 80s, you had this night, not exactly, it gets exaggerated, but you knew these people and you had this night. So, and it's a very funny film, and I think it's a little bit smarter than it gets credit for being. And the second film is called that film is from 86. This is called Electric Dreams from 1984, and it's a film about computers. At one point, computers were new. People didn't know what to do with them. Try and guess who the voice of the computer is in this film before you look at the credits. But it's also amazing because back then, computers didn't have voices. You didn't have like an Alexa or or anything that could talk to you. So they had to have an actor do the voice of the computer. But it predicts AI. It predicts Alexa. It's really, really a weird film. And again, I think it's much better. Now, I kept looking. Supposedly, Phil Oakey from the Human League, because he sings the song, has a scene in it. I couldn't find him. I was kind of bummed by that. But yeah, I just recommend I don't normally recommend nostalgia, because I don't want everybody turning into Fonzie. But I do recommend Anya Yu. Well, this is new, her album Codes, but I would heavily recommend Modern Girls from 1986 and from 1984, Electric Dreams. I think, and Modern Girls and Electric Dreams are available for free on Tubi, so it don't cost nothing. We've recommended a lot of other bands tonight, didn't we? We should count them up.
There'll be a big long playlist of songs to listen to for sure.